Mr. Antonio? Mr. Badger?
Here.
Mr. Bleefeld?
Here.
Ms. Kiavachi?
Here.
Mr. Frank?
Here.
Mrs. Hayman?
Here.
Ms. Karianakis?
Here.
Dr. Morris?
Here.
Mrs. Ginsburg?
Here.
Mia Bonanis?
Here.
And Blake Zimmerman.
Here.
And I think this is Mr. Antonio on our line. This, all right, so we have Mr. Antonio. We have 9 present and 0 absent and 2 student board reps this evening.
Thank you, Katie. All right, I did have some children from the audience that were going to come up and help lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance. So come on up. Whenever you are ready. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for that help. All right, welcome to everyone. Prior to this evening, prior to this meeting, we did meet an executive session to discuss personnel and legal matters. Our first thing on our agenda this evening is prior meetings. If you look at the list, and I apologize, I'm still looking at my computer at this point. Here's our names. Okay, September 26th, we had a work session. On October 2nd was our next regular public board meeting. October 16th was both health, wellness, and safety, as well as racial equity oversight committee. And October 30th was our next work session. Upcoming meetings, it's November 13th, December 4th is our next meeting. And then following that will be December 11th. All right, so our next thing is presentations. And our first one is a recognition of 2 retiring board members. This is so sad. Ronnie Hayman and David Frank. So first, I just want to thank you both for your service to the board. Ronnie, it's been 9 years. That is amazing. And you were, before you even became a board member, you were a school teacher here in Wissahickon. So you have many years of service to our district. And I recall even before running, coming to meet with you to find out what it would be like to be on the board. And you were so right. You were. And you were so gracious to meet with me and discuss that. So thank you. And thank you for your service. And David, thank you also. I don't know if you recall the first time I met you. I kept calling you Frank. Because I was so nervous to be a new board member. But I really want to thank you for your time on the board. You've led our financial committee for years and just done such an amazing job with that. So thank you so much to you as well. I'm going to open up to my fellow board members. I don't want to cry. So who else would like to say something this evening? Zaki?
Okay.
Oh, I thought you were she for your mic.
I was going to jump in right away, but okay.
Hold back the tears.
So, similar to Amy, Ronnie, and David, you guys have both been great, to learn from, to campaign with, to do all the things that we've done in the last 4 years for me. Ronnie, you're always so gracious, and you're always thinking about our students and our teachers. And I love that foundation that you have and that you instilled with us, so that's going to stay with me. And then David, I don't know if anybody can do financials like you can. I don't want that responsibility, but I love that you were so good about, digging into the numbers, kind of understanding the ins and outs of our budgets, helping us guide through the process, which is a lot of meetings every single year, but they're the most important, one of the most important things that we get to do here. And thank you for all your leadership and your expertise in that area. Thank you, David.
And I forgot to note, David has been with us for 8 years. So again, a really long time on the board. Who else would like to jump in? Marshall?
For two colleagues who sit at the other end of the table, it has been an honor and a privilege to serve with both of you. Ronnie, just an incredible person to be able to talk to and learn the perspective of teachers, students, and everyday life on campus for everybody who goes through our school district. Your time and effort has been invaluable, as your advice and counsel, and I wish you all the best. Dave, I blame you for the fact that I'm sitting here. I don't know how many people know. Dave and I served on the board of WRA together for how many years? 10, 15, even more? And Dave ran the largest sport at WRA, the intramural soccer program, and we all said, how on earth is he doing that? I served at an executive level, so I didn't have to deal with that. And you did such an amazing job with that, and when I talked about joining the board, Dave is the one I went to, and Dave, of course, told me, it's no big deal, it's a meeting here and there, it won't be a lot of time or effort. I want to thank you, my wife and children, thank you for that. They haven't seen me all that much in the last 4 years. But Dave, you've been an incredible, not only mentor when we were both at WRA, but also here on the board. I really appreciate everything you've done. I hope everybody else in the district does as well, and I wish you all of the best. So, to both of you, congratulations.
Anyone else? Joe or Rosetta? Sorry.
I just want to say, Rosetta, I just want to say that I'm so sorry that I couldn't be here for your last meeting, to Ronnie and to David. You guys have been amazing, and I've learned so much just from watching you at these meetings. And again, I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there to celebrate you both.
Thanks, Rosetta.
Hi, everyone. It's Joe. Yeah, like Rosetta, Ronnie, and David, I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person. You and I served with both you guys since I first joined the board in 2015, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to sit at the board table with you guys and also to run 2 school board election campaigns with you guys. I'm going to miss you dearly on the board, but I know you guys are going to really enjoy your post-board life, and thank you all for the time, energy, and devotion you've given to the Pacific School District. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to say a quick thank you to Ronnie and David from the bottom of my heart for serving. I know it's a lot of time and effort, energy. I love having Ronnie as my table mate. It's been great. And also, I just want to share, the other night I was talking with Paul, and I said, I'm going to miss Ronnie and David because they're 2 people who are just really good people. And I feel like that's sometimes a rarity to come by, and I just really enjoy you both, and thank you for your character and your service.
Paul?
So I won't be repetitive, but I had the privilege of sitting next to both of you at some point in time with my tenure on the board. So we got to give elbows to each other and share notes and all sorts of things. Actually did not happen, but it was great to be able to spend time on this board with both of you. You've had a long service of dedication to not just the board, but to the district. And we appreciate you both, and I just want to wish you both the best and hope that you will continue to come back to visit with us at least, but that you won't be a stranger. So, thank you for your service.
And we do have plaques for both of you. So if you wouldn't mind coming up here, I would like to get pictures with both of you and your plaques. Oh my goodness, yes, go ahead, Ronnie.
I just wanted to say it's been an honor and a pleasure to teach your children and then to work on the school board to serve the rest of the community. I'm going to try to get through this without crying. But it's a wonderful community. We have wonderful people who live here. The children are well served. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
I would have to agree with Ronnie. It has been a pleasure and a huge honor to serve with you all.
All right, well, I'm going to invite you girls back home. Take a drink. Do you want to continue?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay, just take a breath. Oh, you're taking a breath, okay.
But yeah, I feel like we've accomplished an important things and set some important goals for future accomplishments that I'm looking forward to see you all get through. I appreciate all the kind words and the gross exaggerations. Thank you so much.
Okay, now, do you want to take pictures?
Now for the picture.
Now pictures, okay. Come on, come here.
You can go up there. Alexis, go up there. All right, now we'll move on to our next presentation, Dr. Swain and Kloss from the Behavioral Sleep Medicine Associates.
Thank you for having us. It's a tough act to follow, so congratulations to you both. It's nice to feel the warmth, and hopefully that'll continue as you think about decision-making around school start times. So I'm Dr. Kloss, and this is Dr. Swain. We have teamed up here as a psychologist and as a physician to share with you specifically the knowledge about and science about school start times. So we're going to give a very focused presentation on that tonight and leave some room for questions as you go through this decision-making process. So just one sentence about myself. I am a clinical psychologist. I have an expertise in sleep and practice at Bryn Mawr Psychological Associates in private practice. But I also wore another hat for some time. Both of my daughters graduated recently from Radnor High School, and I was part of the committee that moved us through that process. So I have a unique vantage point from being on the front lines of the decision-making, seeing children go through that, and also from the science perspective. So the title of our presentation is Adjusting School Start Times to Support Adolescent Sleep, What the Research Tells Us. So I think the first question that even we asked ourselves when we started learning about this is, what's all the fuss about? And we're taking through three critical pieces of information here. First, adolescent sleep deprivation is a national epidemic. I think everyone has become aware of this. Upwards of 73% of high school students do not meet the recommended minimum of 8 hours of sleep. That's according to the CDC. The second factor to consider scientifically is the delayed shift in circadian rhythm, which starts at puberty, usually around middle school, makes it extremely difficult for students to fall asleep prior to 11 p.m. It's not that they're being lazy or belligerent, it's a physiological situation. Then we have alarms waking adolescents up during critical REM sleep. So the point in the night, or what we would say in the morning, where they're starting to really get into REM stages of sleep, when memory consolidation happens, mood regulation happens, that's when the alarm is waking them up. So they're getting woken up at a pivotal point where sleep is restorative. And lastly, adolescents are chronically sleep deprived at a time in life when sleep is critical for their developing brain. And when you think about things that teenagers, risk behaviors, inhibition, those kinds of things that we get concerned about, mood, mental health, driving for the first time, this is a critical time period, so we really want to be paying attention to their sleep health. So that's kind of in a nutshell what the fuss is about. We want to make you all aware of the scientific community consensus. This isn't something that people just get on a bandwagon about or is trending. We have a number of societies and organizations, such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the CDC, the AMA, all recommend high school start times of 8:30 a.m. or later, okay? And by starting at 8:30 a.m., what that would enable students to do, it enables adolescents to achieve the requisite 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night. Interestingly, and this is one of the most common concerns that comes up, it does not lead to, there's a lot of research on this, does not lead to later bedtimes. It's rather to more total sleep time. So they don't just go to bed later when you push the start time back. Maybe there's a marginal difference of 10 minutes or so, but overall they get more sleep. And lastly here, it allows adolescent sleep to better align with their own circadian rhythm. Just as an FYI, in fall 2019, California passed and signed into law the first U.S. statewide legislation explicitly designed to protect adolescent sleep by requiring most California public school districts to start no earlier than 8 a.m. for middle schools and 8:30 a.m. for high schools. And there's a lot of legislation looking at this now, even in PA, to start looking at legislation to try to move this forward because of the agreement scientifically. One other thing, and I apologize, this was a little word heavy, but just to draw your attention to this. In 2019, there was a consensus letter signed by over 120 experts in medical research, public health, medicine, sleep medicine, pediatrics, psychiatry, adolescent psychiatry, and preventive medicine, who similarly stated the volume, breadth, consistency, and strength of the peer-reviewed scientific research support later school start times are unequivocal, exceeding the high standards for public health and education policy. So we really do have a consensus built. And what we want to move through now is specifically break it down. I'm going to hand it over to Amanda before we ask questions and stuff. But we want to take you through specifically what the science says when it comes to sleep and health and safety performance.
Thanks.
Yeah.
As Jackie mentioned, I'm a family medicine physician and I have a specialty in behavioral sleep health for all ages. So it's really important to note that when we think about things that we actually have an effect on in health, that we don't necessarily have an effect on as many things as we like, but we can actually do something about sleep for teenagers, and that's why this is something that we want to pay some attention to. So the effect on sleep of changing to a later school start time, what we've seen is over 50% of students with that later start time of 8:30 achieve at least 8 hours of sleep. And as Jackie mentioned, we're talking about students sleeping longer. Yes, some of them will also go to bed a little bit later, but not significantly so. So we see that if they have more time in which to sleep, they will do so. And then, of course, as we hoped, this reduces daytime sleepiness. Effects on performance, I think, are really helpful to think about because we want students to feel good, but we also like to think about how we even measure that. And so what the research has shown is that when you have that later start time in high school, you see improved attendance rates, you see fewer missed school and lateness, you see fewer suspensions, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. Increased graduation rates, overall improvements in statewide achievement tests, things like GPA. And overall, we see the most significant academic benefit among students with disadvantaged backgrounds, whatever that means. So it could be students that are changing districts a lot. It could be students that have other challenges with getting to school, staying at school, having enough time after school, or working so they don't have enough sleep time. So the point of that is to say, we wouldn't say across the board, every single student with a later start time is going to have a higher GPA. That would be misrepresenting the data a bit. But the point is that for students that have these challenges, those are the ones that we're going to see the most benefit to making the school start time later. And this is, I think, a really interesting thing to think about. When we think about adolescents in general, we think about, wow, these people are at the peak of their health, right? They're young, they're strong, they're learning so much, they're taking so much in. But we also know that in this population, we still see significant morbidity and mortality, and that just means harm and death. And what do we mean by that? Well, it means that there are behavioral and psychological issues, and all of these things can have effects on their executive function skills. So not just memory, but decision-making. Things like managing impulse control, right? Like their frontal lobes, the front part of their brains are really still developing at this age, probably until age 25, but that's another talk. And so, we really want to think about ways that we can help them with decision-making, help them with motivation, using good judgment, and paying attention, because all of these issues up here are things that sleep plays a really important role in. So if we give them more sleep, the research shows that they do better in these other areas. And then along those same lines, the effects on health and safety, specifically fewer depressive symptoms that students are reporting. There's less caffeine use, less illegal substance use. Again, because if you think about it, some of the drugs that students use may be to help them stay awake and alert, or also then to sleep once they actually finally have to. Decreased health center visits, so the immune system is impacted by sleep deprivation, so if we get them more sleep, it makes sense that they don't need as much health center support. And then what I think is really remarkable is lower rates of teen motor vehicle crashes. And that's all research supported. So we just put this quote on the slide, on the last slide here, and then if there are any questions that you want us to take, we can take them. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for that presentation, very informative. Are there any board questions this evening? Marshall?
With the statistic regarding the 73% that don't get 8 hours of sleep, what does the research show in terms of what they're actually getting?
It's kind of all over the place, but I mean, most adolescents probably get somewhere between 6 to maybe up to 8, so most of them are able to get sleep, it's just less than what their body needs.
Most of the time they're falling asleep somewhere around midnight, probably would be a fair estimate, an hour or two past the desired bedtime, and then waking up sometimes as early as 6:30, right?
Or earlier.
Or earlier to try to catch buses and that kind of thing.
Is there advocacy for going a bit earlier as opposed to just shifting the start time out?
Yes.
What's the
absolutely.
ideal time then? If we wanted to get them the requisite 8 to 10 hours sleep, where would you like to see them sleep? If we couldn't get them, we don't want them at midnight, where would you like to see it?
There are definitely behavioral things that I think is important for parents to be aware of. So things like a social curfew or screen curfew, things like shutting down all of those stimulating behaviors at least an hour before you want a child to go to sleep. But as Jackie pointed out on one of those slides, part of it really is physiological. Their melatonin is being released later once they go through puberty. So their brain is literally not getting a signal that it's time to sleep until probably, but probably, to try and force a teenager to go to sleep before 10 o'clock, I think that it would be very difficult for them to do that.
Are you seeing any statistics about those students who, once they graduate, have difficulty acclimating to either college, military, jobs, things like that, if you can't start at those later times? So for instance, if we move back to a start time of 8:25 and then they graduate next year, there's an 8 o'clock class. Or you gotta be up early because somebody tells you you have to be up early, or you have a job. How do you compensate for that? Or teach or help them through that?
I don't think it's an interesting question. I don't think there's been studies on that specifically looking at that. I think what we're trying to do is during these pivotal years, give them as much sleep as we can as they're developing. And then the longer we can do that, like you would hope that if they go into a college setting, they can schedule classes as best they can to further accommodate that shift. But I think you're trying to do as much as you can while you can, and you have that ability to make policies around that to support that.
And also, keep in in mind that as they then move through puberty, you know, most people by the time they hit 21 or 22, then they're going to settle into what's their more stable adult pattern, right? So a lot of the kids that were really delayed sleepers, you know, I mean, most of us as teenagers can remember there was a time when we were able to sleep until like 11 o'clock in the morning, and then that goes away. So the normal biological shift happens though at the end of that adolescence period. Most people shift back, and then it's easy for them to.
And I think it shows that there are other factors, obviously, that are important in this, whether it's diet, exercise, limited activity, exposure to high stress, and different things like that. We're talking about a global issue. This is one component of that.
That's right. I think we're always trying to work on all the other things about powering down devices and balancing schedules, and you know, there's a lot of things. You know, we don't want them on their phones in the middle of the night too. There are a whole host of behavioral modification on the individual level. I think what's important, that this is one of the things that has the biggest impact on a societal or community level. It's the one thing that's modifiable that has the greatest impact overall for the greatest number of individuals.
That's like the public health.
That's public health, yeah.
I'm curious, so you noticed that students weren't going to bed that much later, even when things were pushed back. How do you account for things like after-school activities or homework? If that's not changing for them, why is the sleep time not changing much?
Well, a couple things that come to mind with that. One thing is, or one belief is that a lot of times they're doing things more efficiently, because if they start sleeping better, they're going to start performing better. And so what used to take them maybe a longer time, the effort to do the things they need to with a well-slept brain is thought to be better, less time-consuming than if you have a sleep-deprived brain in going on and doing that. And a lot of times it's accommodating, right? Like accommodating sports schedules, accommodating other kinds of things. But I think it really comes down to they're able to get the work done in that amount of time, but before they might not have been able to get to sleep at that time. And when you allow that extra time for them to sleep in the morning, you're just going to have a more total sleep time, a greater sleep duration. But it's not like they're pushing their bedtime back later to get those things done. Do you mean like more time in the day or the schedule pushed back? Maybe not.
I meant like in the evening. So you mentioned that they don't necessarily go to bed later. So
Right.
let's say you have 10 o'clock bedtime, you weren't seeing it, you know, significantly later because the school time was pushed back.
Right.
But still, kids have after-school activities. They have homework,
Yeah.
things that fill those
Right,
hours.
so instead of like laying in bed unable to sleep at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, they are able to sleep much better when they sleep more in line with their rhythm.
Yeah, and I mean, exactly what Jackie said. I mean, we know that sleep is tied so closely to your ability to concentrate, emotionally regulate, executive function. So it stands to reason for all of us, even if you're well, if you sleep well, then you're much more able to attend to those tasks in an efficient manner than if you're sleep deprived. And it just kind of snowballs and it takes longer, and then you're more sleep deprived the next day. So it's not a great situation.
And also, one of the slides mentioned suspensions. And I apologize if I did miss it, but how does it tie into suspensions? Because you know it's a lower number.
It's the impulsivity piece
Risk
there.
taking. A lot of times sleep deprivation is linked to risk taking. So if you're sleep deprived, you're less inhibited, you're more likely to engage in risk taking behaviors. So that's the theory, I suppose, in terms of why you would see reduced suspensions, because you have greater, if you're better slept, not as sleep deprived, you're better able to have good clinical, or better judgment, better decision making, and so forth when you have that. And less likely to use drugs and alcohol when you are not as sleep deprived, and those kinds of behaviors as well. You know how that can spiral from the drugs and alcohol to other risk-taking behaviors and such. So.
And that's the thought behind the fewer car accidents as well, right? So that's what the research shows, and then we're kind of saying like, oh, that's really interesting. Why is that? So that's the thinking behind it. That we see these rates go down, and so we kind of say, well, it stands to reason that that's affecting the impulsivity, the decision making, the executive function, and the mood regulation.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Yes, Paul.
Just one quick question. I think your presentation was terrific, first of all. Thank you for that. It seems as though the school start time is one component of a lot of different factors that all districts have to consider, and that society has to consider. I'm wondering if you looked at other similar factors like daylight saving times, for instance, and how that affects students' abilities and behavior and all the other things. Obviously, a lot of us are still suffering from the recent change in times that we often go through with the adjustments this time of year. But have you looked at that, and can you share some of the
That
knowledge
was a
you might have?
great question. I'm glad you brought that up. So standard time is actually healthier for our sleep and for adolescent sleep compared to daylight savings time. So what we're going into right at standard time. So there's been a lot of hullabaloo about switching, and no one wants the switch, right? The switch, everyone's kind of getting over the switch of switching back. So there's a lot of health, there's injuries, accidents, a lot of things that come from switching back and forth with standard to daylight savings time. But when you look at what's healthiest for our sleep, it's the standard time. Bright light, and especially for adolescents, we don't want to unravel the school start time like that movement either. But getting bright light in the morning is really helpful to wake up the brain. And then darkness at night helps the brain and body in adolescents and adults to acclimate even better. So there was movement for a lot of people to switch all to daylight savings. Like there was one school of thought is to switch to that. Actually and the American Academy of Sleep Medicine actually has a position statement on this as well. It's really healthier for us to be on standard time and for adolescents to be on standard time.
So I know there's been discussion about legislation one way or the other. So if, for instance, legislation moved us to standardized time, would that lessen the effect of
That would actually
changing?
enhance it. That would be helpful. That would also be helpful to get brighter light in the morning and powering down more darkness to help that secretion of melatonin. That aligns better with our circadian rhythms compared to daylight savings time.
So you would then recommend the standardized time along with
Absolutely.
not a need to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions, dear?
Mine kind of ties into what Paul was saying. So like we know that when we spring ahead and lose an hour, we see a 24% increase in cardiac incidents and we see a 6% increase in car crash fatalities, right? It affects us. So when you put those, statistics, or you put some things that affect some performance, do you have any numbers associated with that? Or ballpark numbers of like, you know, how many fewer or what percentage decreased health center visits? Or
Yeah,
just ballpark?
We do. We basically summarized a paper that was a summary of like, I want to say it was like 150 journal articles. So yes, and we can get you the data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a website that I could look? Or?
Yeah, actually, we can send it to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
it's
share some
actually-
references
Yeah.
so that can be distributed.
Yeah, actually, I think.
No.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
So
The
working.
Yeah, there's a pair on an article on the bottom.
Yeah, the Adolescent Sleep Health and School Start Times, that's the Research Summit summary that lists all of those articles. And it's broken down by section, so that's a great resource.
And if you're not familiar with the Start School Later website, that is a wealth of information where you will find a lot of different, you can even find what districts have changed, and there's a wealth of information on there. So if people are searching for other information, I would highly encourage you to visit that website as well.
I also just wanted to say thank you both. This was really a great presentation. Thank you for your time.
And this might be also a follow-up, and it might be in these references. And I also don't know if we've had sufficient time to look at post-effect of changes, but that would be really, really telling if we had statistics or data to show how this change in school start times impacted mental health, physical health, athletic health, and academics, like all of it. Like if there's a way to summarize that information, that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, that's in that same article includes research articles that look at each one of those, and that's in schools that have made that.
Yeah. So when we presented on that, those are the reported summarized effects of all the literature that was available at the time of that. The effects on sleep, health, safety and performance. So that would cover that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Joe or Rosetta? Not hearing any. All right, well, thank you again. We appreciate the time this evening. All right, I'll now turn it over to Dr. Crisfield.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and thank you to the doctors. This is a perfect segue because, as you recall, we have committed to 4 presentations this fall of 2023, on the topic of school start and end times, in response to a desire for more detail, what it would actually look like here in Wissahickon should it be implemented. And tonight is about busing. These are the fall dates. Either one has come and gone. That was last meeting, where we looked at the start and end times, when they would actually be here, and I'll review that shortly in a second. Tonight was with Drs. Kloss and Swain, and then you can see upcoming meetings through January, really, to purposely hash out details by topic. Again, thanks busing. And then there was opportunity for feedback all along the way. So everybody knows what our current times are. Start times for middle and high, they're tier 1. Elementary is tier 2, so we have a 2-tiered system right now. And start and end times, everybody knows those. The new call in this presentation versus last will be a look at the first morning pickup possible at either tier, and also the last afternoon drop-off. Now these times are can be adjusted because of traffic, but generally speaking, that's an early pickup for middle and high, around 6:30-ish. And that doesn't mean that every route has the first stop, but more just the ones that are more remote, and the same with the last drop-off. So as you know, option 1 we're calling is double tiering, so we keep the same construct and have middle and high school start at 8:30, or at least high school 8:30, middle 8:25. And these are the same times, start and end times, that were shared last meeting. The new information tonight is that when that first morning pickup would be in either tier, and when the last afternoon drop-off would be in either tier. And also from last meeting, option number 2 is when we would change possibly to a triple tiering construct. We'll talk in a second about other impacts other than drop-offs, but as we discussed last meeting, that would be middle basically staying where they are now, high school moving to 8:30 target, and elementary being the 3rd tier. So the associated first morning pickups and last afternoon drop-offs are listed there. Again, that doesn't mean every route would start at 6:51, but just the most remote ones. That would be the bracket of drop-off and pickup. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the financial considerations of either option. Option number 1, remember that's the double tiering one. We keep things double tiered. If we were to move to those later school start times in option 1, it would be about $220,000 more per year. Annual cost, and that's because we're going to need a mini tier of sorts to pick up our North Monco students and a number of private schools, but we also transport in the morning. Right now, as you recall, we had them join up with middle or high school students. That tier wouldn't exist at the times needed, so we'd have to add a few more buses in the morning to go around and pick up those students. Option 2, the triple tiering, would be different. A whole other tier, which of course you would predict has more money attached, and indeed it's about $475,000 more per year. And that's because we need about another hour and a half for each of 34 runs. The bus drivers work longer, the buses drive longer. We would be able to get our North Monco students and private school students in with middle students, since they would still be in that first tier like they are now. So that additional cost wouldn't be in play, but certainly the additional cost for the more time, about 1.5 hours each day for the routes. And this is just a little side note, and we'll get to this when budget season comes shortly, but labor costs and transportation are going up next year no matter what. And that's because of the ongoing, truly acute shortage of bus drivers everywhere. So those above additional cost estimates include that effect, and that effect, whether or not one of the options is chosen in the end, will be rolled into the budget deliberations coming up in the next 7 months. Okay, a few other considerations. After school, there's actually little impact on the busing costs for sports or other after-school activities in either one of the two options. But please note, next meeting is when we speak in detail about what the impact on athletics and other after-school things will be in general. So busing-wise, it's about the same. Might end up being a little later, but cost-wise, it would not be a whole lot different. We'll talk next meeting about athletics and after-school. Traffic is a bit of a wild card. Intuitively, later in the day, both morning and afternoon, it becomes more challenging because it's more of an unknown. All of you feel that when you get on the road yourselves. One nice thing about the second option, which you know is the triple tier, would be it will help a good deal, we think, about with the gridlock that can grip Houston and Dager, and when all three, or when two of the schools are arriving or dismissing at the same time. Triple tiering would relieve that piece, so we'll get a little bit better there, which is a nice thing. It's hard to quantify that, but those of you who deal with that snarl every day know what I'm talking about. The bus stops, one of the considerations is winter afternoon runs could finish close to or in darkness, depending on where you are in the run. And bus drivers. As I mentioned, there's a very real acute shortage of bus drivers everywhere, all districts. Us, if we went to tier 3, we would need more hours, that 1.5 more. That might be more appealing. We actually might have a benefit of being able to attract more drivers since they get a little more pay each day. Or it might not be, because it might be the case that bus drivers would prefer the current number of hours they work. So it's just hard to tell. We won't be able to tell bus driver turnover. You can't ask this year's worth of roster of bus drivers what they would do, because we also can't tell what other districts are going to do in terms of their hourly rate. And it's a pretty fluid market. Okay, so for tonight's presentation, please remember that both options still have the high school starting at 8:30. That hasn't changed since last meeting. Both options here have a financial impact and others. We have 2 more of these detailed presentations coming up in the next 2 consecutive board meetings. The next one on December 4th will be athletics and after school. And the one on December 11th will take a deep dive into childcare impact and also the impact on our North Monco students. All of these presentations are available on YouTube. They're being recorded, and if somebody can't make it live or at normal nights, not tonight, Zoom, you can go back and watch. And there's a wealth of information still on the website, either what was previously provided. We still have our feedback form. Thank you to all of you who have shared your thoughts on that. It does all get read and all gets shared. And there's also an updated FAQ there as well.
Thanks so much, Jim. My question is, so you mentioned that maybe $220 for double tiering, an additional then $475 for triple tiering, but you also mentioned we're already going to see an increase in 24, 25. So we'll be voting on this before, though, we would even get into budget season. So what can you tell us about what the anticipated costs, the increases are for 24, 25?
I don't know if we have a handle yet. The additional cost of 220 or 475 is above and beyond whatever other normal costs would be. So let's say this is no option. And transportation costs will go up, round number, I don't know, like 400,000 to say. That's gonna happen no matter what. And on top of that would be these other two, should they option be.
Okay, so I misunderstood. I thought you said that was already included in that figure.
No,
This would be
these
over and
four,
above.
those two numbers consider the fact that hourly rates are gonna be up. And so when we get the budget, the budget season starts fairly soon. There won't be any final decisions, but the decision will be able to be made in the context of the bigger picture budget.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Second?
All right, so my sort of thought is, I almost feel like we're in need of first getting a handle on a recommendation for double or triple tiering, because it's a very different conversation in my mind. Like, we either say, okay, to accommodate the growing population, and the nightmare on Houston is, Houston is to make everyone safer, we're gonna go to triple tiering. Okay, but even if we said we don't want to change start times, but we have to move to triple tiering, inherently, we're moving someone, because we still need that 45 minutes to get each of those runs in our large district, right? So that's like almost a different conversation than, what we're having. But maybe we can say, feasibly, we can make improvements to Houston Road to make things better traffic-wise and keep the double tiering, even with the increased population that we know is coming down the line. So that's my first thought. And then my second question to you is, how full currently are middle school and high school buses?
Okay, the first one, it is the case that, let's say neither option is chosen and the decision is to keep things the way they are. I do think that in a number of years' time, probably sooner rather than later, there's going to have to be some consideration to some sort of structural change to the traffic flow options on either Dagger or Houston or both, because it's bad enough now, let alone when more vehicles get into the mix. And I don't think it's possible to switch to a triple tier system, given how the geographical expanse of our district, without having one of the tiers be that much later. We can't really go earlier. So if the increase in student numbers and traffic volume on Dagger and Houston becomes something that needs to be addressed, I don't think it gets addressed with triple tiering. I think it gets addressed with road modification. And regarding the busing, I don't know, have that on top of my head. Wait, do you know about the average now?
Yeah, I don't know an average. I do know that at the beginning of the year, we did have complaints about overcrowding on certain buses, and then other buses probably don't have it, and it also depends on sports seasons versus non-sports seasons. So it's all across the board. Sort of like what Dr. Crisfield was talking about, though, even whether a bus had 30 on it or 50 or 15, it still has to pretty much do the same route, and it's a time sequence of how long it takes to get to where it needs to go.
Yeah, sure, I get that. My question was more in regards to like, do we have to triple tier based on we have too many students on the buses? But it sounds like probably that's not the issue at this point. I know a lot of parents drive their children, which is part of the traffic.
If a neighborhood, say, has many more students, then one option would be add another run rather than one tier.
Jim, if we do need changes in traffic pattern, presume that will involve traffic studies, and I presume that will involve our townships, if not the state or whoever may be involved. Who typically pays for those traffic studies, and if we need to do different things, signals, streets, things like that, who typically covers the cost of that?
Well, let me just be clear, I don't think anything of that sort is imminent. So I do think there's a traffic issue with the number of vehicles right now. We have not begun any sort of investigation into what might be a study. We've done traffic studies, but in terms of like adding a turn lane, let's just say.
But my question is, if that is determined at some point a need because we have an inundation of students coming into elementary, middle, and up and high, who typically puts the bill for that? Is it the district, or is it the state? Or
It's almost always the district. I mean, it's especially if it's on property.
I'm sorry,
It's on our property. If let's say, a turn lane eats a little bit of our grass, that's ours. If it has something to do with traffic lights somewhere, we would possibly share the bill or foot the bill. It's not going to be a whole lot of charity out there to fund our problems.
We're going to end up footing the bill for any changes that might be done, essentially. And then your I'm not saying you're recommending, but it sounded like the double tiering was more advantageous than triple tiering.
Triple tiering will take a number of the vehicles at the simultaneous presence of vehicles out of the equation. So triple tiering would actually be better for traffic because middle school vehicles would come and go, and then high school vehicles would come and go.
And by looking at this, it looked like if by either double or triple tiering, our high school students who use the bus could be getting home around 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Let's go back.
The high school.
High school would start, they would, either option would start at,
Correct, but them getting home, the high schoolers would be around 4 o'clock.
those who take the bus and those who are on the last, or the end of the route would be 350 or 355.
So if they have a job or something else, they're not getting there until...
If they take the bus and they're at that last stop, then yes.
Okay, thank you.
But they will be home for their elementary school siblings. I understand the kind of fluidity that we have with our bus drivers, but I do know that some of them have been with us for many, many years. Have we kind of like sat down with them and had a little chat about any of this to see kind of a little bit of a temperature read from their perspective at all?
I am not going to have that conversation with them, so I think it would be very, very difficult to start walking them through scenarios and talking about what their personal impact would be. And I think Dr. Crisfield hit it. I have at the last budget sessions, both this year and last year, spoken about the fact that one of the first things that we're going to need to do is just increase pay for the bus drivers based on the competition that occurs. Colonial increasing their rates and North Penn increasing their rates. That's probably more of a worry to me in total competition. I think Dr. Crisfield also hit it on the head, which was individuals would have a different impact. So if you're going from here to another job in between and coming back, and we lengthen the day, they're going to go to a district where they don't have to do that. On the other hand, if they're not, say they don't, and they have free time in the middle of the day, maybe they would prefer that. So I think it's very much going to be individuals making their own decision, and then whatever the decision is, truthfully, the board would have the requirement to Dr. Crisfield and myself to figure out how to make it work and get the bus drivers that we need to do it. So.
But just so I understand, we don't have a finger on the pulse of what they would want.
I'm pretty hesitant to stir up a whole lot because I don't want them leaving now based on something that they may or may not have to have occur in the fall.
But if we make a decision on this in February, say your hours now change, we have no idea what the retention rate could be.
If you are interested in when we get to the point where this is one of the critical factors in the January timeframe, we can have those conversations. I would just be very careful because the minute we start putting some uncertainty out there, and there are other jobs out there without uncertainty, that's when I would start worrying about losing drivers.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Joe or Rosetta?
Nope.
All right, well, thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you. And actually, we go right on to the next presentation of the night, which is our changing. First of all, let's just switch gears entirely here, and then everybody take a deep breath, including myself. And we're going to go to our quarterly update on our opportunity gap and our efforts to close it and to share out what it is. So as you recall, the board has asked for these quarterly, but we do 3 in a year. We can take the summer off. Tonight, we're going to do a little reminder about why we pay attention to all this. We're going to visit our equity dashboard just in terms of what it is. And then as we discussed last time, we're going to take a deep dive into 2 specific indicators. What we call achievement indicator number 1, and then equity indicator number 8. The dashboard has 16 indicators, And as we go through these, we'll take turns going through the indicators and just sort of not just explain what they are, but also share out the historical results. Okay, so just to anchor us a little bit, we try to stay rooted in our district mission. There it is. There's some more words for it. It has to do with belonging and having our students be inspired and also inspire, engage and also be engaging, excel and be and in every aspect of their experience here. And then if we ever see a gap in that happening, we want to pay attention to trying to close it. So our goal is to, and we're going to go over two tonight, identify them and be very specific and be very transparent in the fact that they exist, measure them, and then most importantly work to eliminate the gaps. But one thing we have to always be cognizant of is that if we're going to have some sort of real lasting change, it's going to take some time. And we will not be able to stand up here in a year's time and say, well, that gap is closed. We will be able to say that we're making progress on the bedrock causes of the gaps, and over time, we're confident they will close. So remember, we as a board goal last year, we created the equity dashboard. It lives on our website. It's dynamic. As soon as the data is updated for a given indicator, it's posted there. And as I said, we have 8, both equity and achievement. And there's also some words, a few words, that try to get at not just what the indicator is, but why it matters. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight, too. So here's indicator number 1, reading on grade level in grade 3. This is where it lands on the dashboard. And this is what it is. We define for our purposes grade level as meeting the thresholds on these 2 assessments. I won't go into details of them right now. They do get at both decoding and comprehension. It's not like this is the right definition of reading on grade level, to be clear. This is what we use locally. It's pretty restrictive because we feel like we'd rather have our goal or aim high rather than low. The why, I'm not going to really go into too much of the why. It should be obvious. Reading is really the cornerstone of everything else. And all of your academic and life pursuits can launch from there. We have this plan, and its plan is evolving. We continually meet with our leadership team and at all levels, and also the directors. It's data-driven. It has some strategies. I would like to highlight that last one there. The foundations, you recall, we added that through the budget process in the fall of 22, and we feel like that's an excellent addition to our arsenal of things we do to help students start reading. Here's the data over the years. A little hard to read, we'll post all this, but again, this exact graph is on the equity dashboard for everybody to see. And with the exception of the couple pandemic years, you can see that pattern of the gap still exists. This is very troubling. It should be the case that all of those lines are about equal, meaning that students read or not based on some sort of race or ethnic characteristic. And we still have the gaps that we still need to work on. And I think it's important at this point to point out that gaps aren't because we don't know how to teach reading to some students. Gaps because the same reason that every single one of these indicators has a gap and our society has gaps is that there are things at work in society that need our attention. And seeing things that work in our schools that need our attention. Whether it be the student feels like they belong to the school or that our teachers and our schools are truly culturally responsive and set up an environment where all students feel that they belong and can learn. There's a lot of that, and that's the type of thing that takes a lot of time. Adding foundations to the mix is going to help as an example, but it's not going to fix the gap. The gap gets fixed over time. And here's equity indicator number 8. This one is kindergarten readiness on the dashboard there. each year in the summer, we use this local screening tool. It's very non-invasive. It does a very little bit of time, and it just gives us a sense of whether our or how ready for school or kindergarten our incoming students are. This tells us a little something about each one. And we just set the bar at an even 100. If you score 100, you're considered ready. Nothing different happens, but it gives us some insight as to what our students, what the class looks like. Now, why? This one also should be pretty obvious. If you hit the ground running in kindergarten and are ready to start learning and take advantage of everything that happens in school, you're that much less likely to have gaps moving forward. This one is not quite as easy for us because the students aren't under our care and often aren't even identified to us until they get to what they register. We have things in place like our 0 to 5 literacy initiative that reaches students or children at age 0 to 5. We have some collaboration going on with local preschools, but I will say that the plan for fixing this gap, which you're going to see in a second, is very much, or I should say more under construction, only because we got to find ways to find the students before they get to us and do things with them and for them almost before they are on our rolls. You can see here that the pattern persists over the years. It could be, one hypothesis we have is it could be that maybe language is a barrier. If one language is spoken in the home, and then all of a sudden they're asked to speak a different language at school, that might account for some of the gap. That doesn't mean we don't try to close it. It just might give us some insight into how to go about doing that. So these are just 2 of 16. We'll do this regularly over the course of board meetings. We are continually looking at ways to fix this, and again, whether it be tactically with something like foundations or strategically with something like a culture responsive to teaching. And as painful as it is to show these indicators and these gaps, I think it's important that we are committed to doing this openly and honestly. And this is just what we have, and we go from here.
Thanks, Jeff. So my first question about the reading scores. I noticed like the years that were up there. So the last year that you had up there was actually the year my daughter was in 3rd grade. So I know her kindergarten year was affected by COVID. And I see a decline in the past couple years from when COVID was till when the tests were in 3rd grade. So did teachers give any indication to you, like after you've spoken with them to say, do you see any difference from COVID? What do we attribute this to?
Well, as you could, I would say that yes, for sure the pandemic impacted students of all ages, and especially in the younger years when they didn't have either an opportunity to socialize with their students their same age. And so when they come into an environment where they're in a room with 20, 25 other kids and they bounce off the walls because that's something new for them. How do we really expect them to take advantage of all the things we have to teach with regard to reading when they're still trying to figure out how to sit in a rug for 20 minutes? So things like that. These dips across the country are very real, and it could be grade 3. This one, you see the same thing in grade 4 math back fluency, which is indicator number 2. You'll see the same thing in standardized test scores throughout the country. So yes, the pandemic absolutely impacted readiness. It impacted their ability to be in a social environment, and it impacted their learning for those year and a half or 2 years.
And how do our teachers feel about the foundations program that we're using now? I went through a little bit of training for kid writing, so I got a little bit of a preview of some of it, but how do teachers overall feel about the curriculum?
I might ask Dr. Dewan to weigh in on that if you would, please.
We have gotten tremendous positive feedback from teachers and administrators with the implementation of foundations. Specifically, they're noticing the impact on students reading holistically from having the foundational skills that Foundations provides. So nothing but rave reviews, and we're hopeful that we'll over time see the impact of Foundations implementation, which was fall of 2022, on our students as they progress through the grade levels.
Great. And seeing these numbers, have we done anything to add additional reading support specialists pushing in or either pulling out students?
We certainly have, this year, continued to take a deep dive into how we structure our data meetings and data conversations, not just looking at students who need individualized, sort of targeted interventions, but also looking broadly at core instruction, which is actually a critical aspect of data team conversations that we haven't really taken full advantage of with our data conversations at the elementary level. And so this fall, teachers and administrators, as they've been having their data team meetings, have had conversations around looking at patterns across the data within a grade level, for example, and identifying what are the specific skills that we need to hone in on and target holistically, looking at that reading data, in addition to identifying students who require those more intensive interventions in reading. There was, and I'll speak a little bit later around, about the in-service day on November 7th, but on that day in the afternoon, grade level team, in the morning and afternoon, they had various opportunities to dig deeper into math and reading data, which was critical for them to continue the conversations around data-driven decision making. So.
Great, thank you. And then my other question about kindergarten readiness. So what have we really done to like look into like the specific preschools and what they're teaching students, what information the students have prior to starting kindergarten, so that we can maybe get a better idea of, you know, what we need to maybe talk to the preschools about in our area?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we have had conversations. We are very reluctant to, shall we say, grade or sort of, you know, and certainly wouldn't make it public because these are economic considerations for the business owner. However, when the preschool directors get together with our team, they are almost all are very interested in getting better what they do. And why? Because then they can go ahead and tell prospective families next year that they're aligned with what's thinking, and they meet with us and we are on the same page. And in the preschool level, it's not quite as much about teaching reading, of course. It's really more like getting the kids ready for the social aspect of the classroom. Maybe some letter recognition, but it's really very, very rudimentary. It's more like what are our behavior expectations for kindergarten? So that when they get to us in kindergarten, they're either on a score ready, or they're at least, if not under 100, they're at least not surprised by the environment of a kindergarten classroom, because that's a huge part of the challenge early in the year.
Certainly, I think the social aspect is really important. Yeah. But I know we do have that initial interview with kindergartners, where there's certain things they're not necessarily expected to know, but we would like to know if they do know them or not. Do we give that information out to the local preschools to make sure that they're prepping the students to a certain extent?
We don't like this call prepping the test, but the good news is whether or not Johnny scores 105 or 95 on the screening test, the experience is the same. So we ask that they please just do it authentically. And rather than give that screener to the preschool specifically, we do say, hey, we would like some letter recognitions, maybe some numbers, shapes, colors, basics, and also these are our expectations for the social aspect of it.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Second?
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate all the work we're doing around this. Slide 8 with the grade 3 is really like hitting me really hard. We were at overall above 90% in 2015, 2016, and now we're hovering around 70%. That's a significant kind of decline. And especially with our Hispanic and Black students, there's been like just a dramatic drop. And I understand the data fluctuates and there's a lot of factors and COVID is in there, but this is just, I mean, I'm like sick to my stomach looking at this. And we like, I don't have a solution, I just have lots of questions. But did we change like how we're evaluating things? Did we kind of change the parameters around this? Did we, like, 20 points?
First, let me say, we share in your concerns. So let me just be very clear. We are looking at the same thing. We are sharing in those same concerns. To answer your question, there was, and I'm not sure which year it happened, so I don't want to misspeak, but there was one shift, but not significant enough that we could say that's it. When the DIBELS tool, the instrument that we use, the dynamic indicator of basic early literacy skills, shifted from the DIBELS Next to the DIBELS 8. So there's that nuance, but we're not here to say that that is the reason, because no matter, this is a problem.
Will also be, there's an indicator also that has to do with the standardized test that the state administers, PSSA, which has an ELA component. And that's not just reading, but it has to do with comprehension. And that is also on the dashboard. And that will also be something we'll share out and look at, because this is our local definition of reading at grade level. And absolutely, you don't want the trend line, regardless of which group you're talking about, to be in that direction.
Do we have any benchmarking data nationally, statewide, to see if this trend is kind of a global trend, or is this an isolated situation? I just want to understand, like, is this more systemic than here? Like, I just want to get a better grasp around this data, because this is just not sitting well.
One thing I think would be good is, we have the annual standardized testing report coming up in, I think, a month or maybe two. And that will show our district's performance on PSSAs versus other blank districts, and also the state, is the county. So there will be, not national, but there will be state level or county level or region level comps for the PSSA results, which is this. There probably wouldn't be a comp for this, because this is our definition of reading at grade level. We combine those two, the DIBELS and the MAP testing. And there's standalone DIBELS testing and there's standalone MAP testing from other places, but not in this combined fashion. So I think the benchmarks will be more useful on the state level with PSSAs, which you will see in a month or maybe two.
But PSSAs are not third grade.
It can be. You will have all the grades.
Third grade.
Yeah, we'll have all the grades this year.
I just have a quick question. Are the maps, so PSSAs are standardized with the state. Is the maps testing like our own test, or how is that, is it different from other maps tests in other districts?
You want to share the answers? No, it's the same, but it's much more useful than these other, like the PSSA, for reasons that Dr. Long shared.
Right. It might be helpful to consider these assessments as local measures, if that's helpful to sort of frame it in that way. And I can't say that there are data available for other districts that use MAP in order for us to compare.
One thing also I can add, the achievement indicator, I think it's number 8, is a look at growth over time from grade 3 to 5 in both ELA and math, using specifically the MAP test. And that is, the MAP test is good, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but it sets an individual target for each individual student. So if you're already a high achiever, it asks you to improve a little bit. If you are still an emerging achiever, it expects you to achieve a little bit more, because you're starting from a lower point. And then if you hit that growth target, you get credit. It's recognized that the classroom experience for you that year, you grew a significant amount. You might not yet be proficient, or however the state might measure it, but you're doing well. So that's not on this indicator. That's on the growth indicator, which will maybe next meeting will be good for that one.
So I understand that this is very specific to us, but I still think we should kind of take a step back and look at any other type of benchmark that we can kind of draw some sort of, comparisons or analogies to kind of understand. I mean, third grade is such a critical grade, so I just want to get a little bit more data around this. I just want us to understand this a little bit more and see like, what do we need to do? Thank you.
And Jim, I'm just curious, so we're measuring this in third grade. Have we taken the opportunity to sit down with our third grade teachers? Some of them have been teaching that grade, I'm sure, for many years, and just trying to get, from their perspective, if they've noticed anything different in the classes moving up, to see if there was something that changed in the curriculum that year. And certainly they would want to see the scores improve as well for their students and know that their students are reading at level. I'm just wondering if we had that opportunity to talk to them to see if they've noticed anything.
The answer is yes. I don't know if you want to go into detail like when that happens.
There are data team meetings throughout the fall and then again mid-year, looking at the reading data specifically. And in those meetings, I can't say that the conversation is what has happened in the past. I think teachers certainly recognize the significant impact of the pandemic on students' reading experiences, but instead it really takes the time to look at the data, to analyze the data, to make decisions around where are gaps in terms of what we need to do differently with our students, and then plan for targeted interventions for students specifically. But those data meetings do happen every fall and winter to look at, to analyze, to make decisions around, to move us forward.
And are the teachers surprised by the results? Like, I think about in the classroom every day, teaching a certain students, I would have a pulse of how they're going to perform, just based on how they're doing in the class. Are they surprised that the students don't do as well as they anticipate, or do they expect them not to do that well?
They are working with the students every day, and so when they come into those meetings, the conversations around data that they see in terms of data trends across a grade level in their building, I don't think surprises them because they're with those students day in and day out and have those day-to-day experiences. And so living with the struggles of some of the students that they're faced with is certainly something that they oftentimes come to the table knowing a great deal about their students and where those challenges are.
I will say anecdotally, I know this isn't data, but the 22-23 third grade class is a class 5 kids are in. They missed the last part of their kindergarten year and their whole first grade year. And that did affect them. And I can tell you, I've had friends that, teachers in other districts that say that class specifically, last year's third grade, this grade, fourth grade class is just a tougher class, behaviorally and academically, because of that really key time missed.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Now, just to remind the audience that we aren't recording in a different fashion than usual. So everything that's being said in the audience actually can get picked up by the camera. So just be careful about side conversations. All right, no other comments or questions? Then we'll move on. All right, we've reached our first public comment period. And this is for topics that are agenda topics only. We allow a maximum of 5 speakers on a particular topic. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. And note that it's not our practice to engage in dialogue when appropriate. We will post responses on the website. Nobody online tonight writes technical issues. Okay. All right. Well, then I think I only have one for the first public comment period, and that's Amy Hughes. When we approach, please state your name, your municipality, residence, and the topic. Thank you.
I wasn't really going to talk, but then those slides came through. Oh, that came up. Okay. Amy Hughes, Ambler Barrow. Specifically on 5.2 and 5.3. So at 5.2, I was a little lost because we've done a lot of talking about the middle school. I think I heard correctly that, absolutely, that's the year we start to see this happening. That's a hard year anyway, middle school years. It's a big transition year. You're moving from elementary to middle school. You've got a time change in there. So I don't know, some of these options made me real nervous about the middle school starting at 7:30. That kind of contradicts the science. If we're going to put our middle schoolers
in at 7:30, and we know that's when their brains aren't waking up. But our elementary kids are going to go in at 9:15 when they know they're wide awake, closer to 7:30. I don't want them at the bus stops then, no. So, I don't know, it's a tricky one. I think in general, though, maybe the better idea is, I think we have to vote. Like, I don't want you to delay the vote anymore, but maybe I think we need an extra year in there to flesh out all these details and figure out how we're gonna make all this stuff work. But I am concerned about the middle school and if we're following the science or not following the science, because we seem to be contradicting a little bit with some of these age groups. I'm still kind of reeling on the last slide, so I'm sorry. The measuring. I'm concerned about measuring it. I know it's going to take a couple years to figure out if the benefits, you know, if all of this is working. But I feel like that means that we can't do anything else in the meantime if we're going to measure the success of it. And I know we're not going to sit back and just hope that starting later is going to fix all of our behavior problems and bullying problems and fighting issues and all the other stuff that we have going on at the school. So how are we going to measure this and identify if just going to school later is the solution to all of this? Like, I'm just looking to figure out how we can measure those goals a little bit better. And then the last thing is that, are we, and I guess this is more of a question, but I think unless we do this California style and everybody does it across the board, it becomes really difficult. Are we engaging with our neighboring districts? Not districts that have already done it, but like the people that we play sports with. I'm really worried about doing this and spending this money for only helping what's probably going to be about 50% of the high school population. So those are my concerns there. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All right, I don't know if anybody else is registered for the first public comment period, so we'll move on then to our board president report. And this evening, I have no informational or action items. Superintendent report, Jim?
Just a quick rundown on all the awesome activities that took place last week in recognition of Veterans Day. At the elementary level, there were, all 4 schools had similar things where they would invite parents or grandparents or friends, relatives into the school. And I happened to engage with a class at Lower Gwynedd where the students were asking the veterans directly very important things, like what was the food like when you were in the Army, and what time did you have to get up, and how bad was it, and things like this that were on the students' mind. And by the way, the veterans were awesome with them. And that was, I think, way more impactful, although the veterans certainly appreciate the assembly, which happened in the songs, but the chance to interact one-on-one, both probably more awesome for the students than the veterans, but I'm sure they appreciate it as well. That's at the elementary school. The middle school had their annual gala, which is really quite a production, and the veterans will walk into the school to the cheering of the cheerleaders and students lining the hallway. They sit for a breakfast. Some students read some meaningful poems to them, and the student performers are there. And then they walk out to another round of cheering. It's just an incredibly positive recognition of people, and there's many ages of veterans. And then I think this year, actually, one of my favorites was the high school's ceremony out by the Veterans Memorial there. One of our board members actually participated, made a very nice job with the singing. The Camerata has some beautiful songs, really awesomely placed, interspersed with poems. Had to do with, it's not just glorious to be a veteran, it's actually really painful and quite a sacrifice. And so students' words were shared, and there were some statistics on average age of World War II veterans and Vietnam veterans, and kind of put things in perspective. And then, of course, the singing was spectacular. So that was really nice. And then we actually did participate also in Saturday's township recognition from Lower Gwynedd. In fact, one of our employees and residents and parents was one of the speakers, Mr. Campbell from the middle school, and the middle school band was there, and some others. And so, all in all, our district does a really, really nice job recognizing what I feel to be a very important annual event. So kudos to the staff and students.
Thank you for that report. Any comments or questions?
You came to my kids' class and they really loved that, so thanks. But really because they're their teacher coordinating the whole thing, I think.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you for that report. Assistant Superintendent report, Dr. Dewan.
Thank you. Yes, I have one informational item tonight. I'm excited to share the details of our November 7th in-service day. Staff engaged in workshops and collaborative sessions that focused on a variety of topics across culturally responsive teaching strategies, technology integration, and student-centered approaches. Our Department of Teaching and Learning works really hard to collaborate all of the many learning opportunities and to meet the needs that we hear directly from our faculty and our administrators in terms of professional learning. And so I'll highlight just a few examples this evening. Our elementary teachers focused in the morning on math data review and analysis to look for insights on strengths and areas for focus as they plan for future math instruction and classroom interventions. They also explored differentiated math resources. Elementary teachers also focused on understanding English language development and supporting our English learners, which was an area of focus for our secondary teachers last year. During that session, they had an opportunity to explore strategies and tools to help elevate their instructional practices, supporting our English learners. Encore teachers focused on vocabulary acquisition and instruction to identify potential shifts in their instruction to address the needs of English learners. And our secondary teachers, some secondary math teachers, they focus on critical thinking and math discourse and problem solving. Secondary teachers also had an opportunity to select from among 3 sessions that all focused on pedagogy and practices to support all learners. The sessions included a focus on culturally responsive teaching practices, embedding social and emotional learning competencies, and creating and collaborating using Canva, which is a technology platform that encourages creativity and collaboration with students. So they were able to learn some new approaches to instruction using that platform. Our secondary social studies teachers and librarians were able to take some time to engage in some curriculum conversations focused on current events and global conflicts, something that is a continued conversation throughout our school district. There were a host of other targeted opportunities for specialists and really working to meet individual needs in some of those unique positions like our related service providers. And then the afternoon was building-focused professional learning, and that was designed by our school leaders in response to their building-specific needs. And keeping those specific needs in mind, they were able to design the afternoon. Many of those sessions focused on digging deeper into data, identifying reading and math interventions. They also had conversations around PBIS, which is something we're working to implement and ensure that there's continuity and fidelity in implementation, which is positive behavioral interventions and supports. So it was just, amazing. And I want to just give a special thanks to all of our administrators, our instructional coaches, our teacher leaders who are helping to facilitate some of these sessions, everyone who helped to provide these incredible professional learning opportunities throughout the day. And of course, special thanks to Dr. Schmidt, our Director of Teaching and Learning. So thank you for the opportunity to share this evening.
Well, thank you for all of that. Any comments or questions? No? All right, well, thank you. All right, next we'll move on to our board solicitor report. Jeff?
All right.
Do you want me to just mention what I asked you to do that?
Yes, please.
So prior to this evening, I did ask Jeff, in light of the recent election results, to share with us what our options are with filling the seat that will become vacant on December 4th when Ian Berg is unable to be seated as a board member. So I did ask Jeff to look into that and to provide us with a report this evening.
I want to preface my comments by saying that this board is not technically empowered to address the vacancy created as the result of the death of Ian Berg, who was duly elected as a board member to fill a 4-year term on the Wisconsin School Board. Ultimately, the decision of how that vacancy will get filled will be up to the successor board of school directors effective December 4th. December 4th is the date of board reorganization under the school code, and that will become the board that ultimately makes the decision as to how to fill the vacancy in question. Now, even though there may not be a huge change in composition on the school board, ultimately, that's the board that will make that decision. And following the reorganization meeting, where the board reorganizes and determines who the board officers are going to be for the upcoming calendar year, there will be a regularly scheduled public meeting at which time the board will ultimately debate and address the issue on how to fill the vacancy. Section 319 of the school code provides the process of how you address this issue. I've been doing this for 45 years, and I will be honest with you, this is the first time in 45 years that I have had a situation where a deceased candidate for a school board has created a vacancy. We have had situations where individuals were duly elected to a school board, but elected for whatever reason not to participate or attend school board meetings in the future for whatever reason, and did not show up for board reorganization, and within 10 days of that date, the position could be deemed to be vacant by the then board. In this particular situation, the school code says, if any person elected or appointed as school director who has been notified of his election or appointment, and that notification would come from the Board of Elections in Montgomery County, which has not certified the winners of the election as we speak, shall refuse or neglect to qualify as such director within 10 days next succeeding the beginning of his term of office, the remaining members of the board may declare his office as director vacant. His office shall be filled from the qualified electors of the school district. In this case, because Ian Berg unfortunately will never be able to be notified of the election results, does not apply, so it is my legal opinion that the vacancy will be created as of the date of reorganization on December 4, 2023. Under the school code, the board has 30 days to fill that vacancy, which obviously runs into the holiday season, and the 30th day would probably coincide with the day after New Year's. I didn't do the exact counting, but it is 30 calendar days. And if the board wants to retain jurisdiction of making the determination of a person to fill that vacancy, it would have to act during that time period. The board does have, as I said, a publicly advertised school board meeting following the reorganization meeting on December 4th, and also has another meeting scheduled that has been scheduled already for December 11, 2023. The board has no other meetings scheduled for the month of December, and though I can't speak for the board because we really have not discussed this issue, the board will have to make a determination as to whether or not it can schedule something that further into the month of December that works, where there will be a quorum of the board and sufficient individuals to make that decision. But for the purposes of tonight's discussion, let's assume that the board wants to act by December 11, 2023 within that 30-day time period. based upon its already existing schedule. The board will have the option to, and the code does not specify any of these options. I'm just speaking in terms of what boards can do under the circumstances. The only thing that the school code and the Sunshine Act says that in the event that a board member is ultimately selected, that the board has to do it at a publicly advertised meeting, and that any deliberations on the selection of the board meeting needs to be done in the sunshine at a public meeting. So the board has a choice to either choose from a retired or previously seated school board member, or go through some type of undefined process of selecting a board member by inviting individuals to submit applications, and the board can then vote within its discretion to pick who it wants. The fact that a school board previously followed a different method does not bind the new school board as to how they select their individual. It is totally within their discretion under the circumstances to fill the vacancy. The vacancy is only filled to the next municipal election. So even though Ian Burke's term was for 4 years, the individual who would be so selected would serve for 2 years until the next municipal election occurring 2 years from now in question. So I think I've reviewed the methodology in question, but I just wanted to make it clear in the event that some of you are here to talk about this. Ultimately, this isn't the decision of this board technically, it's the decision of the reorganized board after receiving certificates of election for the newly elected individual or individuals that would come onto this board. And technically, there will only be, there were 5 new board members elected, I believe.
Only one will be different than what's.
Yeah, that's right, but the school code defines that at reorganization, only the holdover members are originally seated. So the holdover members are the board members who were not subject to the electoral process in November, earlier this month.
So 4 of us did not run.
Yes, so the 4 of you who did not run will convene the reorganization meeting. We will then get certificates of election that come in from the Board of Elections. The new board members will be sworn in and seated, and then from the entire group, you'll decide who your board president and board vice president will be for the upcoming school year. After that meeting adjourns, then you'll have a meeting with the newly constituted board to decide how you want to address this vacancy.
Great, thank you for that very detailed explanation, Josh.
Probably a lot more than anybody ever wanted to hear. Okay. Okay.
All right, so thank you. Board members, what questions or comments do you have regarding this? If any? Lucia?
Can we do anything until the 4th? No, right? That's the answer, Jeff, right?
That's,
So then there's no.
that's correct. You're not doing anything until the new board gets seated.
Okay.
I just didn't know if I had any questions regarding the procedure. Everybody's on, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to prevent a board member from expressing what their thought process is, but for the purposes of this evening, we're done.
What's this?
Do you have a question? Did you have a question, Dan? Okay. All right. No other questions or comments? All right. Then we will move on to our board secretary report, right?
Thank you. There's no changes to items 11, 1, 2, and 3, so I'm requesting approval of action items 11 1 through 11-3.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Anyone Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then, do you want to go right up to the board treasurer report?
Yes, thank you very much. There's no change to action item 12-1, so I'm requesting approval of action item 12.1.
Do I have a motion? A motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Aye.
I'm assuming they were in favor. No? Sorry, I should pause a little bit longer. All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Human Resources Report, Danielle.
And I always have changes, so changes from last week's agenda are marked with an asterisk and can be found in bold in details in the detailed report. These include appointments, leaves of absence, extracurricular changes, volunteer additions, and winter extracurricular additions in 13.1, 13.2, and 13.4. 13.8 was added as a contract for services for psychological services temporarily, and all other items were reviewed at last week's work session and have no other changes. This evening I'm seeking approval for action items 13.1 through 13.8. Thank you.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
Can we please separate 13.4 from this vote?
Okay, so we'll do 13.1 through 13.3, and then we will do 13.5 through 13.9, including that, sorry, and then 13.5 will just be separate.
Do you want to do 13?
13.4, sorry.
13.4 is roll call?
We'll just call, yeah, we'll do that roll call, yeah.
Technically, the motioner and the seconder have to agree to that, so as long as it's okay with them, they...
Marshall, okay with you?
Sure.
David?
I agree.
Okay. So do you want to do first the 13.1 through 4 or 3, and then 5 through 9, and then we'll go back to the roll call?
Yeah, we can do that one first.
Okay, so all those in favor of 13.1 through 13.3, 13.5 through 13.9? Aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed to that motion?
I guess we're just letting Wade retire.
Should have, yeah, separated that way. All right, now we'll move on then. So motion passes. We'll move on now to 13.4.
For a roll call,
Mr. Antonio?
Aye.
Mr. Badger?
Aye.
Oh, not you, Rosetta, sorry.
Mr. Badger?
Yes.
Mr. Bleakville?
Yes.
Ms. Kiavachi?
Aye.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Hayman?
Yes.
Ms. Kariakis?
No. No.
Dr. Morris?
No.
She said no. Okay. Mrs. Ginsburg? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 yes and 3 no. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. All right, we'll move on now to 14, the Communications Committee report. Zebby?
No, please.
All right, thank you. Curriculum and Technology, Robbie, your last report.
I have no report.
Perfect. Well, I like it. It's very quick. That was great. All right.
We have no informational items and no changes to those 5 action items from our last meeting. So tonight we're seeking a motion to approve action items 15.1 through 15.5.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second? Is there a second? Oh, you second? Okay, you did. All right. Any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I assume you were in favor. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Slow down.
All right. Facilities and Transportation Committee. Joe, are you able to handle that?
Yep. So for Facilities and Transportation this evening, there are no informational items, and we have 3 action items, which we reviewed and discussed at the meeting 2 weeks ago, and they are unchanged from that last meeting. So with that, I guess I will ask for a motion for approval of action items 16.1 through 16.3.
So moved.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. We'll move on now to our Finance Committee report. David?
Thanks, Andy. There are no informational items tonight from the Finance Committee. We have, 7 action items that we're requesting approval for. Item 1, approval of financial reports has been updated since it was last presented 2 weeks ago. I'll be asking for approval of action items 17.1 through 17.7.
So moved.
Second. All right, a motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, we will move on now to our Policy Committee report. Marshall?
Thank you, Amy. There are no informational items this evening. We do have some action items. I presume it's the reason everybody's here tonight, is to hear the second reading approval of Policy Committee sections that we have previously done a first reading and approval on, and now we've done a second reading and now seeking the approval of the second reading of those policy, either additions, changes, or recommendations, of which we've already read, and there are no changes. So, if anybody has any questions, let's let the games begin.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, the motion's made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Well, I am excited that you draw a crowd, Marshall, for me.
I know they're all here for you, Marshall.
All right, seeing no comments or questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Racial Equity Oversight Committee, Paul?
Thank you. We have no items for this evening. I do have a reminder that we will have our first listening session for the year, which is scheduled for November 20th at 7 p.m. and it will be held at the Ambler Borough Hall. So all are welcome to attend.
Great, I look forward to that. Any comments or questions?
Paul, isn't there a form you have to fill out though if you plan to attend, or is that just encouraged, not required?
It's both.
Okay.
Encouraged and required.
So maybe it's required, so they won't turn us away at the door?
Well,
Where
for
can they
planning
find this form?
purposes and for, there's limited space, so yes.
Where can we find this form? Is it on the district website?
I think it's on the website, and I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, sent out by
Sent out to
administration.
everyone. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? All right, then we'll go on to Health, Wellness, and Safety. Rosetta?
Is that for me? It's really hard to hear.
Oh,
Are you
yeah,
ready for
Rosetta.
me?
Yes, Health, Wellness, and Safety.
Okay. So thanks, Amy. So just a recap from our last meeting, which was October 16th. Mr. Jim Cairns, who's the athletic director, did a great presentation on the athletic safety. I was really impressed that they have lots of safety measures, including concussion management and protocols for heat accommodations, injury and care, and first aid. We then had a presentation, a brief presentation by Kristen Rawlings to talk about schooling, to talk about engagement of parents and students for the Wake Up and Learn, and that there will be information in Withwell, and so everyone should really look at the Withwell communications for updates on that. We also talked about walking to school and what a great and positive feedback we're getting from the community about having the crossing guard at Mount Pleasant and Hendricks. I then also attended the health and safety meeting from the district health and safety meeting on October 17th, and lots of good discussions there. The nurses are going to look at vaping in the schools. The AEDs have come in. They're going to be placed in appropriate places. There's a lot going on with the nutrition program. Chef Steve is looking at healthy food offerings for all the students. And Dr. Chaim McCloskey talked about mental health and some different resources that are available to parents. And that is also listed on the website. And Dr. Chaim McCloskey also plans to create a video to talk about all the resources that are available. So it looks like there's a lot of good and healthy things happening in the district. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Rosetta. Any comments or questions?
I have a question. Are we going to have more people trained in using the AEDs? Is that something that's come up? Like, we talked about it briefly, I think, but I'm not sure.
It's really hard to hear. What was your question?
That was one of the items that was talked about, and Kelly was, Dr. McCloskey was going to get back to everybody about how many people were trained. There are core teams that are trained in each of the buildings, and there's also discussion about what about after school. So we'll send that answer out to everybody.
Wait, you answer Rosetta? Oh, I was just like, Rosetta, no, I know she heard. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, seeing now we'll move on to report of board representatives. Extracurricular, Marshall?
There's nothing to report this evening, thanks.
MCIU, we have our next meeting this Wednesday, so I'll report in December. North Monco.
So we haven't been able to get a quorum for a while, so the next meeting's actually next week, so hopefully we'll be able to get a quorum for that one. They've turned it into Zoom because they like to get enough of us there, which is unfortunate. On the plus side though, and I believe every school board member should have received this, they have a holiday dinner. This year it's Monday, December 18th. I went last year. It's really wonderful. Like you get, like everything is prepared by the students. You're served by the students. It's just, they do a really, really nice job. So you should have gotten an email from Carol Carr. So look out for that. I encourage if you're available to go. It's really nice to see our students in that capacity. Nothing else.
Great, thanks, Becky. Any comments or questions? All right, then we'll move on next to PSBA liaison.
So actually, Amy, you pointed this out to me today, but news out of Harrisburg, Representative Jill Cooper, Republican out of Westmoreland, is going to introduce legislation to propose that the school day for all public secondary schools begin no later than 8:15. We don't know any of the other details or how much support it will receive, but it's something that's interesting there. But it says her proposal would begin until the 26-27 school year. That would be the target.
Yeah, on that note, I did ask Jeff in advance of this evening's meeting to draft a resolution. So it won't be on our agenda until the December meeting. But he did draft the resolution for our support of that proposed legislation. So we'll take a look at that for our next meeting.
Great. I also would encourage, I know we shouldn't be open comment right now, but on this topic, we should probably reach out to Later School Start, the Later School Start organization to see if they're actually going to help support the legislation and whatever efforts they do, because they're statewide. Well, I think they're national, but they have a statewide, chapter, and that might be something that we would want to collaborate.
I did reach out to the CSBA representative asking if they're going to be supporting the legislation. I haven't heard back from them yet, but that's a good thought, Stephanie.
And when's our next ESBA Day of Action?
I think it's in the spring.
Is that
I think it's fall and spring, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That might be something we also want to address with our legislators at that time. All right, Employee Relations Committee.
Yeah, on Thursday, we met with, the Employee Relations Committee met with a few members of the WEA to discuss later start times, and the teachers were able to provide us some, teachers and staff, sorry, were able to provide us some insight, so that was good.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, then we'll get to our second public comment period. And during this public comment period, it can be on any school-related topic. Again, we allow a maximum of 5 speakers on any particular topic. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. And note that it's not our practice to engage in dialogue, but when appropriate, we will post responses online. So approaching the podium, please state your name and your municipality of residence and the subject on which you're speaking. All right, our first is Eric Holmquist.
Thank you, Eric Holmquist, LNI resident of Lower Gwinnett. So I'd like to speak on district communication on the evening of Friday, October 22nd, an event occurred in which 2 students were involved in the Wissahickon High School home football game, one of which was the son of Eric and Chastity Bruno. At this incident, words were exchanged, but nothing related to either race or religion. The next day, without having interviewed either student, and acting only on the hearsay from someone who was not in attendance, the superintendent issued a hastily written email to the Wissahickon community indicating that an anti-Semitic incident had taken place at the game, one involving hateful anti-Semitic actions and words. While no names were given, the association of the incident was obvious and immediate. Playing off this statement, the family of the other student has waged an aggressive slanderous campaign within the school district and the Jewish community to reframe this incident as a hate crime directed at a Jewish student. They allege that anti-Semitic statements were directed at the abuser, which has been attested to by attendees in the immediate proximity as an unconscionable fabrication of facts. Subsequent investigation showed that no such statements were made and no further action was taken by the school board or authorities. Nevertheless, despite repeated attempts, requests of the superintendent has refused to issue a statement clarifying that the original email was premature, was based on inaccurate information, and that this incident did not represent anti-Semitic motives of any kind. By refusing to do so, he's allowing the other student's family to continue to perpetuate falsified information, accusations, which has perhaps irreparably harmed the Bruno family, who are 20-plus year residents of this community and have been avid supporters of the Wissahickon schools. So, Mr. Superintendent, your actions have put a local family and students in harm's way and subjected yourself and the school district to potential civil litigation for defamation of character, which would certainly make all of these facts public and could have significant reputational and financial repercussions on the district. Will you now commit to doing the right thing and issuing a correcting statement to clarify the mischaracterization of this incident?
That's not a question and answer.
So again, I would just note that this is just an opportunity to speak. If appropriate, we would post responses online.
I understand, I'm asking if you would choose to respond.
And again, this isn't a question and answer session.
Okay.
Board's responsibility.
So then, in closing, let me speak to the board.
But the time is actually up, so you can certainly send us an email with any.
And I have 30 seconds just to close, closing
We
comment.
give 3 minutes, we have a couple speakers left for the evening.
Okay.
But you can certainly email us comments.
Somebody can allow
All
them
right,
the time.
next is Carrie Ferrara.
Hi, Carrie Ferreira, Low Gwinnett. Originally, I was going to talk about, I thought we were going to be talking about the open position, and I'm just here to ask because I've seen it online that we make sure when you appoint someone, it's in line with what the voters selected as far as the views and beliefs of Ian. That the candidate selected is somebody who aligns with his views. None of the other candidates who run he got more than 50% more votes than the next closest candidate. So we want somebody in line with his thoughts. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Chastity Bruno.
Before your time starts, I understand there's a new policy and procedure in place that I can request additional time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, our policy and procedure is you have 3 minutes.
Well, as you all know, my name is Chastity Bruno. I currently have 2 Wissahickon High School students. I've never felt the need to disclose my heritage, but at this point I'm compelled to do so. My maternal grandparents are both Jewish. I'm half black and I'm half white. On October 28th at approximately 4:15 p.m., Superintendent Chris Field emailed the entire Wissahickon School District community regarding an incident that allegedly occurred at the football game the prior evening. It involved, quote, hateful anti-Semitic actions and words. Though he didn't name individuals, it quickly became evident that my son was the alleged perpetrator. Contrary to Superintendent Chris Field's email, the investigation had not yet begun when it was sent, and no witnesses had been interviewed. Since then, my family has faced various attacks all over social media. Neighborhoods circulated his email to ensure that everyone in the community knew about the hateful anti-Semitic actions and words. Friends of the alleged victim also took to social media and felt that it was appropriate to identify my son, a minor, by name. My son has been approached by students from other school districts attacking him about what happened at the football game. This situation escalated when I was running for Lower Gwinnett Board of Supervisors and faced a social media campaign urging people not to vote for me due to this alleged incident. On election day, while at the polls, Amy, you can ask your husband, I was verbally attacked by a random person screaming, "I should be ashamed, shame on you, I wish your son was dead." The entire ordeal has been overwhelming for my family and could have been avoided if Superintendent Chris Field had waited for the investigation to conclude before making public statements. If he felt it was so necessary to inform the community a mere hours after the alleged incident occurred, he could have said an incident occurred and we are currently investigating. Instead, he opted to send an email emotionally charged on a topic that has already heightened everyone's emotions. Despite several students being interviewed by the police and the school, 10 plus, including Jewish students, not one student corroborated the alleged victim's story. Yet Superintendent Chris Field has not issued a correction. On November 2nd, I requested in writing that he issue an update or correction. So I got a response stating, we will have to agree to disagree on the nature of the message the district sent out and what it may or may not have caused. As our superintendent, his words carry a great deal of weight in this community, and he stated in his email, words matter. Thus, I urge the school board to hold Superintendent Chris Field accountable for his words. If you do not, then you are too complicit in perpetrating the anti-Semitic fear among the community. He needs to inform the community that no incident occurred involving hateful anti-Semitic actions or words. By not doing so, is perpetrating anti-Semitic fear in school where there should not be any. Further, he needs to apologize to my children as they are no longer feel safe in Wissahickon High School. They have wrongfully had a target placed on their back as a direct result of the email that you sent out. In addition, I would hope, going forward, the board would revoke Superintendent Crisfield's ability to send emails without all of the facts.
Yeah.
My name is Karen Sheedy. I live in Ambler. Thank you for giving me this time. Nothing is initially charged as what the Bruno family is coming from. Very sad to hear that. I know I am premature, and I know I have to come back on December 11th, but I'm here to talk about Ian Bird. May he rest in peace. My condolences to his family and to his friends, including his friends that are here. I'm truly sorry that he will not be able to serve Wissahickon and our students like he wanted to. I'm here as a committee person who was at the polls in my ward on November 7th from open to close. Voters were also sad to have learned of Ian's passing. They still voted for the Democratic slate with the goal of having a Democrat named to assume the seat and to serve with values in line with Mr. Bird's. I know school boards are nonpartisan, but I will ask that as you work through the process, or as the future board works through the process of naming a person to fill the seat that Ian earned, please honor the will of our voters and name someone with positions and perspectives that are in line with Ian's democratic values. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. All right, next we have Christine English.
Hi, Christine English with Dayton Township. I actually wanted to talk about the slide and the racial disparities and the achievement gap. I really feel like full stop, we should stop everything else. Like, this is just ridiculous. We have children who are 40% lower. And I was just looking back to 2015. It's not COVID. It's not some disparity that started at COVID. Like, this has gone like that. And we've been talking about an achievement gap. My kids are in 9th and 10th grade. So I think before then. And I just don't see it better. And I don't know what, I get the equity dashboard, but when do we hold someone accountable? Who's gonna, like, if I was performing that way and couldn't speak to why I see certain things or address it right away, and I get that you're taking steps that you're saying you are, but then we move the threshold and it's called something different. And we're making conscientious efforts. Well, I know that I had a child who couldn't read or write in 1st grade, moved into 2nd grade. I spent thousands of dollars to force the district to do something. And I had the funds to do so, and I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to pay lawyers to come here and make the special education administrator do her job. I really think you need to look at that. You need to look at the special education administration, look at what services you're providing to the children who aren't doing well, and address it right away, and not just keep saying, well, the parents need to do this, the parents need to do that. Parents don't have tens of thousands of dollars to pay for private tutoring like I had to do, and still have to do. Even with bringing lawyers in, advocates in, I've had 5 different advocates, met with tons of teachers, met with the special education department. You need to look at your special education administrator. She's not here for our children, and I highly doubt that she's here for our children with racial disparities.
All right, that wraps up our second public comment period. Then we go to board comments. Are there any board comments this evening?
Wait, did you say board comments? Okay. I just want to respond to Mrs. Bruno, who spoke. Thanks for speaking. I'm really sorry this happened to your family. I actually did, I knew about the email that was sent. I don't know the details of the incident still. Your name was never disclosed to me. I'm not on the Facebook pages that did that. My kids are in high school. We knew nothing about it. honestly, I'm very, very sorry that your family feels threatened or anything like that.
She emailed me. I emailed everybody.
Okay, but okay, so I get that email, but like, how else would I have known to me is my kind of my point. I'm not on social media to do so.
I'm not on social media either. I'm not on social media. And my
Okay,
son.
I'm not gonna get into this, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Point
any
is,
other
are you
board
guys gonna
comments?
hold an account? That's
Questions?
the point.
That's your job.
It is your job.
All right, then I'll finish this meeting up by indicating that Thanksgiving is this coming week. So I do want to wish everyone that celebrates a happy Thanksgiving as we move into this time of year. And I hope everyone, whether you celebrate or not, has a great time with your family, friends, and loved ones. All right? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? Second? All right, all those in favor? All right, we're adjourned.